Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, a talented young folk singer balances making music with making a living.
Whether it is paying my bills or not, I'm never gonna be in a place in my life where making music is not going to be where I go when I need to reset or process.
After 6 generations, keeping the family farm going can be rough.
My uncle called a meeting and said that he wanted out, kinda said that he wanted it to be done by January.
So basically, the uncle wanted his portion of the company in cash.
And the Hellbender Salamander is the largest amphibian in North America. They're picky about where they live.
Hellbenders are very secretive creatures. They only live in cold, clean streams.
But those habitats are threatened. You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Folk music is not the easiest way to make a living. So we're blessed here in Appalachia to have as many talented musicians as we do. Like some folk singers I met at an arts collective in Rockbridge County, Virginia, called Mid-Mountain. The sun shines down as 3 musicians run through rehearsal for a concert set.
I'm Elsa Howell. We are preparing for the first ever Mid-Mountain Fest. I saw where they're drumming sitting on her front porch steps. I walked up to her and asked if she had found him yet.
Elsa is 22. She recently graduated college.
I work part-time as a nanny and part-time transcribing and editing interviews conducted by the Virginia Folk Life program.
And like thousands of people before her, she's trying to decide how her music fits into her life.
I don't know if this is a career for me. It could be an intermittent career for a very long time. I mean, it's not my dad's career, but he has been doing it my whole life and long before I was born.
Her dad is Isaac Howell. He's a journalist turned lawyer who regularly plays in the Black Twig Pickers and other groups. He says Elsa's been surrounded by string music her entire life.
I think we drug her to fiddlers conventions when she was too young to object. There were a lot of musicians around and a lot of playing around when she was very young.
When Elsa was just a child, he and Elsa's mother gave her an iPod full of songs that became her first sustained exposure to music.
Like, I think this was back when you had iPod shuffles or whatever that you download some songs on, and we made kind of a rocky one of those for her. I don't even know how we decided what would be on that.
Holding out for that teenage feeling.
Isaac also played in Elsa's first ever band, an ad hoc group formed for a talent show at Elsa's school in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. It was at that school that Elsa first met a musical mentor.
I'm Elizabeth Laprelle.
That was back when Elizabeth was performing with Anna Roberts Javall as Anna and Elizabeth.
Elizabeth was there with Anna singing and doing sort of a lesson.
Yeah.
It was a few more years before Elizabeth noticed Elsa singing.
I think my first memory is of seeing her sing at the Mount Airy Fiddlers Convention folk song competition. Really? And being like, she's good. Yeah. Well, that and through collaborating with your dad occasionally.
You were giving me lessons for a while.
Yes, which your dad did instigate.
He
said, I want to gift Elsa some lessons with you for a birthday or something. Then once we'd done a few lessons, you had the idea to, let's apply to this apprenticeship program. It was a brilliant idea.
Elsa and Elizabeth paired up for an apprenticeship through the Virginia Folk Life program of Virginia Humanities. Elizabeth, after all, has been singing folk songs her whole life, too. wasn't too long ago that she was the apprentice, learning from other folk singers.
I'm lucky. There have been so many women singers who have been so encouraging to me, especially when I was starting out. A big one is Ginny Hawker. She heard me singing at the Mount Airy Fiddlers Convention Youth Folk Song Competition. And then Sheila K. Adams, who I took her class, for 1 week, but I fell in love with her style. Jean Ritchie is another one. She didn't have to go out of her way, but she did to encourage. So if I can live up to that, I would be very happy.
Now, a year after the apprenticeship concluded, Elizabeth and Elsa are both here at Mid-Mountain, a venue and arts collective near Natural Bridge, Virginia.
It was advertised as a zine, a residency, and a performance opportunity.
Elsa's days have followed a pattern. Part of it involves practicing her set with their cousin Jaden Bowman and Father Isaac.
When they're here, we'll rehearse, and when they're not here, I'll spread this blanket out somewhere on the grounds here and just play, write new songs, research those old songs, and see if they have music written already to go with the lyrics, and if they don't, maybe write melodies for old lyrics.
She plays old favorites too, like the traditional folk song Wayfaring Stranger. The nearly 2-week residency has provided a clear space for Elsa to focus on her music. Jaden produced an EP for Elsa that was released on streaming platforms a few weeks ago. This will be the first time they've played her songs to a live audience.
I am a poor wayfaring stranger, traveling through this world alone.
Even though Isaac's been around Elsa her whole life, at times like this, he's still surprised by his daughter's talent.
In that bright lane.
And I have moments when I'm just like almost shocked by her voice, where you're in a room and it sort of seems like the walls are vibrating.
I'm going home to see my father. I'm going home, no more to roam. Oh, I'm just going over Jordan. Oh, I'm just going over home.
For Elsa, this residency comes at a pivotal moment in her life.
I graduated from the University of Mary Washington in 2023. I think I just got to a place where I was like, okay, this era of my life where everything is mapped out and decisions are already made for me is over. I am the sole decision maker, and I need to really learn how to listen to myself. Whether it is paying my bills or not, I'm never gonna be in a place in my life where I don't want to sing or I don't want to pick up my guitar, or where making music is not going to be where I go when I need to reset or process. What do I do? What do I do?
Oh boy, I wish I could tell you.
Yeah.
Elizabeth has spent her whole life making the same calculation, figuring out the balance between making art and making a living.
There's a lot of ups and downs. When I started doing music professionally, a lot of that was exciting and a lot of it was kind of scary. Here I am still eking it out. It's the only career I've ever had. It's also about connections. I think that's one of the most wonderful things about folk music, is that it is still a form that you can do not professionally, that you can do it just because you love it.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're gonna sing some songs for you guys.
The Mid-Mountain Festival is finally here.
I saw Witherbloom sitting on her front porch steps. I walked up to her and asked if she had found him yet.
festival crowd includes some of her family and friends, and they are enraptured by the show.
I'll wait for you forever. Way too high to notice if it's hell or if you're home. Thank you guys so much.
I caught up with Elsa afterward.
How do you feel?
I feel great. I feel amazing. I mean, that was great. I mean, people are so nice. People are just so nice.
What's next?
I feel like I've gained some confidence.
Elsa Howell's future is unwritten. It's a long road. Studies show the average person today will work 5 to 7 different careers in their lifetime. If her mentor, Elizabeth Laprelle, is any indication, this is a balance Elsa will wrestle with for decades to come. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Mason Adams in Natural Bridge, Virginia.
Over yonder in the graveyard, where the wild wildflowers grow, oh, there they lay, and my one true lover gone from me.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. You can find more Folkways stories about charro beans and coffee ceremonies, mushrooms and memes. They're at our website, wvpublic.org. Cade Miller was a student at the Penn State News Lab, which works to address gaps in news coverage, including the plight of family farms. Miller's family came from farming. His mother grew up on a dairy farm just down the road from the Wakefields, a family that's farmed for 6 generations. Miller spent months reporting on the Wakefields and their struggle to keep the family business going. The result is a story that speaks to a dynamic happening across the U.S. as people grow away from their agricultural roots. This is The Wakefields, 2 brothers, 6 generations, from Cade Miller.
Thad Wakefield is a farmer. He lives with his girlfriend Mary in the farmhouse that has been in his family for generations. Thad is in his 30s, and farming is the only thing he's wanted to do.
Once it's in your blood, you can't get out. It's like the mafia. You know too much.
Thad grew up on the family farm in Bedford County, Pennsylvania. His father farmed, his father's father farmed, his father's father's father farmed, and so on. Thad says he's a 6th-generation farmer.
It's one of those things that it's a challenge, but on the same hand, it's fun because then you get to see what you're doing and see where you're going, where you came from.
He went to Penn State and studied agribusiness. Mary, Thad's girlfriend, grew up on a dairy farm in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. She now works as a veterinarian that visits farms. She graduated from UPenn and recently moved onto the farm with Thad. They met at the county fair in 2022. Bedford is a tiny slice of Pennsylvania. Its total population is around 47,000. In 2017, Bedford had 1,159 farms. To say the least, it's a farming area. And I would know. My mom grew up there on a dairy farm. In fact, the majority of my family lives in Bedford today. Aunts, uncles, cousins, distant relatives, and my grandma. I am 1 generation away from my family's farm. That's 3 less than the average American. My mom's dad was a dairy farmer in Bedford. Until his retirement only a year or 2 after I was born, he milked twice a day, planted, fertilized, and harvested crops, all while looking after his family. My grandma was a kindergarten teacher. Growing up, I had nothing but respect for farmers. I know their days are long. They can't go on a lot of breaks, and the pay is not something people hope for. A lot of things are beyond human control. Weather, the economy, sickness, whatever it may be. My grandfather's life was impacted by all of these things. Yet, he never once changed his career. My grandma, who grew up on a dairy farm, has this little quote. Farmers have to be hardworking, they have to love what they do, and they have to be a little bit crazy. When I told her I was going to share her quote on this podcast, she wanted me to explain that crazy isn't like wild or odd. She means farmers are bold. They have to care so much about their craft that even if they don't have a steady income, they keep trying to do better. My grandfather passed away in 2017, 14 years after he stopped farming. His legacy continues to this day as the first farmer to plant soybeans in the county. And the Wakefields, they live across the valley. They're family friends. Farming in Bedford started before the Revolutionary War. In the 1790s, Bedford played a large part in the Whiskey Rebellion. Back then, the federal government imposed a tax on whiskey production. But whiskey for farmers was an essential income. As tax collectors began to enforce the levy across the nation, including Bedford County, tensions escalated and protests began. Violence broke out across the state. Eventually, the farmers who were working as whiskey distillers refused to pay the tax. That's when George Washington took matters into his own hands. He formed a militia to march across western Pennsylvania and defuse the violence. President Washington forced distillers to pay the tax.
Need a little bit more money to pay for the Revolutionary War, so they needed to tax the farmers to pay for the Revolutionary War.
That's Thad's dad. We'll meet him in a bit, but it's said that when Washington marched over the mountain and looked down upon Friends Cove, the little valley in Bedford where Thad's farm is, he saw about a dozen stone farmhouses being used as whiskey distilleries. Washington's arrival spread, farmers reacted. The rebellion quickly came to an end, and the farmers each paid the whiskey tax.
So pretty much the family farm was purchased by our great-great, well, this would be Kim writing this, so this would have been Dad's great-great-grandfather.
Your three great.
John Ordeal.
From humble beginnings, the Wakefield farm has grown through 5 generations of family ownership. Great-grandfather William Franklin Schaefer passed the farm to Walter Clyde Schaefer, who then rented it to John Martin Wakefield in 1961. John, along with his sons, Tom and Jim, formed J.T.J. Wakefield Farms in the 1970s, expanding the farm by purchasing additional land from the neighboring Robert Land Farm. Innovation has been key to the farm's success. In 1962, a farm pond was added for fire protection and recreation. The 1970s saw the construction of a freestall barn to house the growing Holstein herd. And a milking parlor was added in 1981 to streamline operations. The farm embraced technology in the mid-1980s, becoming the first in the area to use a computerized feeding and recording system. From hand milking in the early 1800s to the modern milking parlor, the Wakefield farm has adapted and thrived. Their family-owned farm had become a shining example of agricultural progress. When the farm was thriving under the 5th generation, they had 245 acres. They milked 150 cows a day, and they managed 300 steers. This generation was led by Tom and Jim. They are now in their 70s, but when they took over the farm, they were only in their 20s, recent college graduates. They stood side by side for years, managing the business that operated on the family farm. This was their job. This is how their families earned their living, and this is where everyone lived. But their wives worked off the farm, both teachers. They raised their children on the farm in the hopes that one day the farm would go to them. This is where Thad and his older brother JT come in. Their father, Tom, put them on the payroll after they graduated from college. Jim's son, Scott, same deal. All 5 took an equal cut of the business's profits. But it was quickly clear no one was making enough money. Now think about it. One farm that had supported 2 families was now being asked to support 5. And nothing, other than the number of people drawing salaries, had changed. So this is what they did. Here's JT.
we had sat down in, I think, 16 to try to figure out what the future looked like for everybody. Because at that time, it was my uncle, my dad, Thad, and I, and Scott, which would be my cousin. And it just, there were some issues that nobody wanted to talk about.
And then, one year, as Scott was taking Christmas decorations off the roof, he fell and broke his leg. Everything changed. They were down a guy, but it was also winter. There wasn't much needed to do on the farm, so things proceeded as usual. But in August, their cousin had news. He'd been offered a job at the Farm Bureau that would allow him to work while recovering from his injury. His leg was in bad shape, and a desk job was all he could do at the time. But the truth was, this was a permanent transition. He would never return to working on the farm.
And then my uncle called a meeting and said that he wanted out. Said, okay. And kind of said that he wanted it to be done by January. Said, okay.
So basically, the uncle wanted his portion of the company in cash. He outlined a clear list of what he needed to completely walk away. And neither JT nor Thad, nor their father Tom, had the cash to hand over.
Coming up, the second part of Cade Miller's radio documentary, The Wakefields, 2 brothers, 6 generations. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, educating the people of our region and beyond for more than 150 years. More information at concord.edu.
Cade Miller reported on his family's neighbors and their struggle to keep the family farm going for the documentary The Wakefields, 2 brothers, 6 generations. We pick back up at a hard moment for the family. After Scott Wakefield left the farm following an injury, and his father decided to retire and cash out.
So they harvested, and then they sat down to figure out what was next. Now remember, this farm went from being run by 2 guys to 5, then down to 4, then down to 3 in a couple of years. Farming isn't a job that accounts for days off or trading shifts. There's work to get done, and it has to somehow get done. You can't just choose to show up when you want. A lot of planning goes into who will milk on what days, who will work in the fields with whom every week, etc. So Jim and his only son stepping away entirely changes the situation monumentally. Then, in 2018...
And I just happened to be off that weekend. It was New Year's Eve, or New Year's weekend.
Jim mentioned to Tom that they needed to mix more feed.
And Dad's like, okay, well, just, in the morning, just, you can balance it out a different way, just add more corn silos or whatever.
But Jim, without notice,
he's like, well, that's up to you. He goes, I'm done. This is my last day. Okay.
Unlike how he said he would be flexible in January, he was done. He wanted his cut of the farm. Now let me explain something. As a farmer, you're in it for the long haul. You don't get a weekly or monthly salary. Your big payment comes at retirement when you sell the farm. Jim wanted the retirement money he worked his entire life for. So he met Tom with a demand, a price he would be willing to accept for his half of the cut. According to JT, typically for buyouts like these, it consists of an appraiser coming in and looking at everything and then giving it a price. The buyer and the seller will agree on the price, and then the buyer will take on any current loans and debts the farm has. Now, if this is happening with a family farm passing it down to the next generation, then typically these can be handled internally. However, JT said the demands his uncle made were ambitious. It was too much money. And as we all know, when it comes to money, even family can turn against each other. The only way that Tom, JT, and Thad could get the farm would be to sell the assets and split it down the middle with Jim. To pay Jim out, the farm needed to be liquidated. All of their assets needed to be sold, everything but the land and buildings. That means tractors and animals and machinery and the entire milking system. The cash was then divided between Tom and Jim. Jim could take the money and retire. Tom chose to take the money and invest it in his two sons, JT and Thad, continuing the family tradition. As for the land and buildings, Tom, Jim, and their wives had to go to the courthouse to settle who would get what. Their negotiation settled on Tom getting 50% of the land and paying his brother for an extra 2%, bringing him to 52% of the total ground. With that, majority of the buildings went with Tom's land. Tom and Jim's mom was still alive and living in the farmhouse when the disagreements began. So she left in her will that Thad would get the farmhouse since JT already had a home down the road. She passed away in 2019. The dispute was rough for the family, but JT and Thad say the farm sale was harder. Well, tell me about that.
The farm sale?
Yeah.
That was the worst day of my life.
Yeah?
Yeah. That was rough.
When I spoke with Thad about the farm sale, he described helping people with their trucks and trailers, packing up their very own tractors and equipment that they've had on the farm for years. Luckily, he said, it was time to milk, so he didn't have to watch all of his stuff be driven off the farm and down the road. Now think about it. You grew up doing one thing your entire life. It took up your childhood, your teenage years, your college years, and then, when it's finally your turn to own the empire, it's driven down the street. The farm is totally different. It's quiet. When I was younger, my granddad took me to the Wakefield's farm. I don't remember the purpose of the visit, but I remember my granddad had to talk to Tom and sent me into the milking parlor. There, Thad and JT, who were in high school at the time, brought me down and showed me how to milk with all the modern-day machinery. It was lively, one cow after another, and when they were done with that group, out they went, and cows full of milk walked right in. Like clockwork. When I visited recently, it wasn't like how I remembered. Things weren't where they belonged. Okay, so I can't help but notice, but this is like, I mean, you got like your shop equipment in here.
Yeah, because that's kind of a messy situation. So, ideally, this would be a freestall barn where we just have cows in it. We kind of had to make our own makeshift shop for right now until we get some other stuff done to be able to. Ideally, it'd be nice to build like another shop to where we can get all this out of here in another spot, but till then.
In its heyday, the barn Thad and I are in now could hold up to 150 milking cows. Today, they milk 5. In the wake of the farm sale, Thad and JT had to take on jobs. Thad works as a farm equipment mechanic. JT works in an REI distribution center nearby. A half-empty farm couldn't support them on its own. Here's where we're at. Tom has officially given his half that he got in the settlement to JT and Thad. The two of them are now in the rebuilding stage. They had to take out loans to buy equipment and tractors that they already had on the farm, but had to sell. They want to keep growing the farm to what it used to be, and even larger. They have some other plans, like the possibility of packaging their own beef, or maybe even cheeses or ice cream. JT talked about how he hopes to keep it growing for his kids.
I mean, that's kind of the proud part of it, 6 generations, and you try to set it up and pass it on for the next one to take on.
Your son going to do it?
We'll see. I don't know. I think so. He likes it.
What about your daughters?
Yeah, they like the animals for sure. But, and that's part of it too. Nobody ever forced us into it. Like, it was never, you have to do this, or we could do what we wanted. We had to help. That was part of our chores. But aside of that, you weren't expected to come back if you didn't want to. I mean, that was choice.
In Bucks County, Mary's dad, who was a dairy farmer his whole life, is selling the farm due to other reasons.
Where I'm from, there's a lot of like economic pressures.
What's that mean?
So the agricultural industry in Bucks County is pretty well gone. Land is worth a lot. And we are surrounded by, there's a 6-lane highway to our right, a 5-lane highway right in front of us that our driveway's off of, and a subdivision behind us. So it's very much, it's not really feasible to have a farm there anymore. It was hard even when we were still doing it very actively. And in the last like 5 or so years, it's only gotten worse. So
He's selling his equipment to Thad and JT, one step in growing the farm like they hope. But this doesn't mean that they're out of the mud yet. They're still buying things and taking out loans to expand. For example, they purchased a tractor off my grandma. It's a big red International 756 tractor with white letters on the side spelling out the Jenny Lynn. It was my granddad's tractor that he named after my mom, Jen. When my grandma was looking to sell some of the equipment from our family farm, Tom said the Jenny Lynn couldn't leave Bedford. Today, it sits in their freestyle barn. In 2022, they bought a used combine for the harvest. While Tom was using it, it caught fire.
That was surreal because you always see pictures of it, but until you actually see one in real life, it kind of, you don't realize how fast they go. But
Nobody was hurt in the fire, other than pride. When a combine catches fire, the only thing you can do is watch. By the time Tom got out,
it was too late. She was gone.
What causes that?
A lot of different things. I think ours was electrical.
So ultimately, Thad and JT, with their father's support, are starting from scratch. I sat down with Thad and Tom to talk about what this really meant.
Farming is different from every profession because, let's take a computer programmer. All they needed is a computer to do their job, and they'll do fine for the rest of their life. But, not for you all. What are, some of the expenses that you have to, run through? I kind of, want to paint the picture of how much it actually costs to do it.
You want new prices? Do you want used prices? Do you want a comparison between the two?
You tell me.
So
and I'll write it out.
So basically, depending on it's any.
Where do you want to start at?
Yeah, I guess.
Hold on. Let's take a step back. This conversation lasted an hour. Let me tell you what I understand from listening to the Wakefields. This is what you would need to start a farm near Thad and JT from scratch. A 100-acre farm with a house, barn, and shed in Bedford County, Pennsylvania would cost about $600,000. A used tractor would be $70,000, and a typical beginning farm has 3. A used combine would be about $150,000. A used corn planter, $35,000. A used spreader, $40,000. A used baler, $30,000. A used rake, $8,000. A used mower, $25,000. A used sprayer, $25,000. Corn is about $300 a bag. Soybeans would be about $15 a bushel. Hay and alfalfa would be $300 a bag. Tom and Thad calculated what our new farm would be planting, but I'll save you the details. Dairy cows would be $1,500 each. They estimated starting a farm with 120. Heifers cost $1,200 each. They suggested starting with 40. Insurance would typically cost $3,000 every quarter. Fuel would be about $2,000. The electric bill averages $2,000, and taxes are around $8,000. So, our grand total,
we're at $1,525,500 for me to start off a farm in Bedford County, Pennsylvania.
Pretty much.
And you haven't made $1 yet.
Yep.
Now, this isn't what the typical farmer would do. Start from scratch. And really, JT and Thad aren't. But according to the Farm Bureau, 30% of America's farmers are beginning farmers. Beginning farmers are those who have been in the business for less than 10 years. The average age of a beginning farmer is 47. And the state with the most is Alaska, with 46% of its farms starting from scratch. Alaska is followed by Georgia and Maine, according to the most recent agriculture census of 2017. Pennsylvania falls in the bottom 15 with the least number of beginning farms in the country. Now, it is common for farmers to have two incomes. Growing up, my grandma was a kindergarten teacher. She always told me that farmers had to have two incomes to live. According to Ambrook Research, 56% of America's farmers have a primary job off the farm. They say, quote, a full 82% of farm household income comes from an off-farm source. That doesn't include spousal income. Like I said, JT works at an REI warehouse 5 days a week. His wife is a dialysis technician. Thad continues to work full-time, as does Mary. They fit farming into the cracks of their weekdays and spend all weekend focused on rebuilding the farm. In late February, just days before I planned to spend time on the Wakefield farm, a text came across my phone. It read, JT Wakefield cut his hand at work badly yesterday and lost half his thumb and index finger. It was worse than that, but I'll spare you. That weekend, JT was on the prayer list in the church bulletin. During Mass the next week, the pastor paused and talked about visiting JT. He was in good spirits, but like always, he was quiet, the Reverend said. JT's name would stay on the bulletin for weeks, months even.
When you're working with mechanical equipment, sometimes it bites you. I got caught in the number 50 roller chain and the drive sprocket and took my fingers through it. So I guess the thumb here is just short of the fingernail. The pointer finger is down to the first knuckle. The middle finger was just debris. It's fine. It just has some stitches. The ring finger was dislocated. They put it back together. And the pinky finger is down to just below the second knuckle. So,
American novelist and farmer Wendell Berry once wrote, farming is not a business, as many farmers would say. It's a vocation. It is not controllable. With this injury, JT is out. Maybe for months, maybe even a year. But he's now the paperwork guy. He makes calls. He looks for people selling equipment. He does whatever he can do to help the farm from behind a desk. Thad is now responsible for the physical labor. But with the help of Mary and their dad, they will continue. The Wakefields are farmers. This land, this vocation, the ups and downs. This is all part of a 6th-generation story.
That was Cade Miller's radio documentary, The Wakefields. 2 brothers, 6 generations. Miller graduated from Pennsylvania State University in May. Appalachia is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. It's home to possums and crawdads, screech owls and glowworms, and a notable, particularly odd-looking salamander called the Hellbender. The species is known for being reclusive. I've never seen one except in aquariums. And for the past couple of generations, the species has been in decline. Late last year, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service proposed listing the eastern Hellbender salamander as endangered. Dan Hitt is a senior scientist with the West Virginia Rivers Coalition. WVPB's Curtis Tate spoke with Hitt about the Hellbender's habitat in Appalachia and why it's threatened.
I read that sedimentation is one of the main threats to the Hellbender. What are some others?
I think you're right to focus on sedimentation as a primary stressor. The literature is very clear about that. But there's more to that. They're facing more challenges. They're facing challenges due to climate change. They're facing challenges due to disease. And these things are complicated because they're often interwoven. For example, they require large flat rocks for nesting. And those are features, and also the juveniles require those features to survive. So sedimentation literally buries their home. So sedimentation literally buries their home. But it's also, we also know that they stop feeding efficiently at high temperatures. So as temperatures warm past a threshold, roughly 70 degrees Fahrenheit, as you warm above that threshold, they stop feeding, and so growth is impaired, and that's also, a stressor. Also, of course, droughts and floods can be extremely important. West Virginia has experienced extreme weather. In the last year, we've seen both sides of it. We've seen extreme drought, we've seen extreme flooding. Both sides of that can be stressors and threats to hellbenders, because on the drought side, if we lose stream water, temperatures often can increase, and that can be stressful. And also, they can just lose habitat. On the flood side, anything that's going to flip large rocks or features in the stream can scour out their habitats, and that can be obviously lethal, especially for juveniles. So extreme weather from climate change is also very much a risk.
What about diseases?
We also know that in some cases, disease, a chytrid fungus, can impair populations and can cause mortalities. And it's interesting that those disease effects are often coupled with temperature. So as temperature goes up, other factors become more lethal. So that's an important piece of the puzzle too. So these things often interact, but yes, there are many stressors, but it starts with sedimentation, also effects of, climate change, extreme weather, and disease are also really important.
Where is the sediment coming from?
Any land surface, any surface disturbance that moves sediment down slope can have those effects. Also, water quality can be important, and they breathe through their skin as adults, so they're an extremely important indicator species. Hellbenders are very secretive creatures, but the science is very clear. They only live in cold, clean streams. That's the only place you'll find them. So if you find that the hellbenders in a stream, you know that ecosystem is intact. And we do see some disturbing trends. We see that, it's estimated that about 80% of their historic range has been lost across the 15 states where hellbenders, currently persist. But keep in mind, they have been here for millions of years. It's amazing. We're looking at a living fossil. And if they can persist through all the change that millions of years has brought, it should give us pause that we see significant declines over recent decades, due to land disturbance, movement of soils, climate change, and disease.
Is there a way for folks to tell the Department of Natural Resources if they encounter one?
No agency has enough resources by themselves to go and do these surveys that are necessary. It has to be involved. The public has to be involved, and the public really is stepping up for this. It's important. Sometimes anglers will, catch a hellbender on their line. This is the largest salamander in North America. It's amazing to see, and so people often are confused. Like, what is this thing? Sometimes they're misidentified as mud puppies, a similar species, but they occupy more sort of slack water environments. They're usually smaller. They have gills. It's sort of different looking, but somewhat similar. But anglers sometimes will catch a hellbender by mistake. The best thing to do is clip that hook, safely remove the hook, release the animal, and then let DNR know, because they're so secretive and elusive that having citizen scientists and anglers get involved in the surveying, and it really does help understand their true status.
Assuming they are listed as endangered, what does it mean? What does it change?
That's a good question. It means that there may be more motivation to fund conservation and to develop the programs and partnerships that are necessary to protect the species. It would involve understanding what habitats are critical and developing conservation plans for recovery. That's the main thing that a listing would do. It would start a process of recovery, and that's really what it's all about.
That was Than Hitt of the West Virginia Rivers Coalition, speaking with Curtis Tate about the eastern Hellbender salamander. Birding became a lot more popular over the last few years. And one of the most sociable ways to bird is during the Audubon Christmas bird count each year. The Christmas bird count turns 125 this year. It's the longest running citizen science project in the country. Every winter, between December 14th and January 5th, folks head outside to count as many different kinds of birds as they can. For some, it's a fun competition. But scientists use the data to track population trends and to develop strategies for conservation. WESA's Julia Frazier tagged along with a group of bird counters in Murraysville, Pennsylvania. She brings us this audio postcard.
I'd say the big goal is, especially with these public walks, is just to have fun. But other than that, is just trying to record every single bird that we see. We will try to use some common sense to not count the same birds. So if we see a flock of 6 white-throated sparrows and then 100 yards down we see the same 6, we won't count them. But there will be a lot of white-throated sparrows here. A lot. Gotta be careful with the jays because they'll mimic hawks perfectly, like absolutely perfectly, to the point that I have had some people say, "Oh no, that's too good of a hawk call. It has to be a red-tailed hawk," and then a blue jay flies in and does it. Hopefully you can pick that up. That was a white-throated sparrow that just sang. So when they're down here, they say "Poor Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody." But they breed up north into Canada, and that's when they say, "Oh, sweet Canada, Canada, Canada." So they do switch it up. Definitely seem upset about something.
The raptor, because the blue jays often get angry when they're in their vicinity, so sometimes they could be causing a ruckus because of another species that they don't want near them. So that's what we're kind of hoping for.
We're raising the alarm. These kinglets are like the real test of can you use your binoculars, because they do not stop moving. So these tiny little things are actually a little bit smaller than chickadees, and they just do not stop. Here. So I was going to give you this in case you don't hear from me. That's got my contact info. Oh, nice little spot here. They root for the home team. Coming up the smaller one here with the vines. Just flew.
Did you get to see it?
I saw it
For a moment. Yeah, I know.
They're cryptic little guys.
I also confuse them with kinglets.
Would you say it was net?
One brown creeper.
One creeper.
I thought I had been hearing them. They got a call that's like real high pitched. It's like
Yeah, there's a nuthatch there too.
Which one?
In the winter, birds often of different species will join forces to help find food and also to help like ward predators. So like chickadees are great at knowing if there's a predator, so they help each other out, which you won't see during like the summer breeding season. So this would be like a wave of a winter flock of mixed species. It's pretty common. That's why we could go like long stretches without seeing any birds, because they're all together, like just traveling together.
That was Nick Stallman, Haley and Chaz Lappin, Marianne and Bob Mickey, and Emmanuel Todd, on the Audubon Christmas bird count in the Mon Valley of western Pennsylvania. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Elsa Howell, Black Twig Pickers, Anna and Elizabeth, Morgan Wade, Larry Rader, Steve Earle, Kaya Cater, Nirvana, Nico Case, Sonic Youth, and Blue Dot Sessions. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff and Xander Alloy are our associate producers. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Chris Julin. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe or stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, focusing on students' futures. Classes available at concord.edu/apply.